Hello all, welcome to this session. In this session, I'm going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, what are some common checked exceptions in Java? Let me answer. First of all, what exactly are the checked exceptions? There are two types of exceptions we have in Java. One is checked exceptions and other one are unchecked exceptions. The exceptions which are checked by the compiler before you run the code and where the compiler during the compile time in a particular line of code before you run the code is suggesting that there is a possibility of exception here. Such kind of exceptions which are checked by the compiler are called as checked exceptions. And coming to the unchecked exceptions, okay, during the compile time, okay, before you run the code, Java compiler will not suggest you that there is a possibility of exception. Okay. Only after running the code, you will come to know in the output that there is an exception. Okay. At the particular line. But during the compile time, the compiler will not check that possibility of exception. Such kind of exceptions for which the compiler is not checking the possibility of getting an exception after running the code are called as unchecked exceptions. The kind of exceptions for which the compiler during the compile time before you run the code will suggest that there is a possibility of exception at so and so line of the code and there is a possibility of so and so exception before you run the code. Such kind of exceptions fall under the checked exceptions category. Okay. So in this checked exceptions category, what are the common checked exceptions we have? File not found exception, input output exception, that is IO exception, then class not found exception, parse exception, SQL exception, interrupted exception, and there may be many more, guys. Okay, these are the common ones that we generally come across while writing the Java programs. So here in this session, so to make you guys understand each and every exception that is unchecked, checked exception type, and for making you guys remember this stuff, I'm going to demonstrate this checked exceptions in this session. Okay, for that I'll switch to this Eclipse ID and create a new class. I'll just randomly create a class name. Let's say new. I'll just create a class. I'll name this class as class 24, just giving some random name here. With main method, I'll create, click on finish. And once I do that, here, I'm going to write a code for the first type of exception, checked exception, that compiler during the compile time will check that there is a possibility of exception before you run the code. That is file not found exception. Okay, I'll write for the file not found exception. What is the code I have to write? I have to create a file, guys. File is equal to new file, or file1 is equal to new file. Anything you can write. File1 is f1 is equal to new file. And here control shift O, file class will be imported from java.io package. Here we are going to represent a file which is not available or which is available in this project. Okay, so let's say there is a file under the project like abc.txt file, which is there in the project. And if I say file buffered reader or file input stream, otherwise file input stream FIS is equal to new file input stream, I'll write. Okay, file input stream FIS is equal to new file input stream. This is one of the predefined class in Java which can be used for reading the text from the file. Hover the mouse on this file input stream and import this file input stream from java.io package. And this constructor cannot be empty. We have to pass this particular file that you want to read the text from. But even after providing this file in this file input stream, you are getting a checked exception. Okay, compiler is giving a compiler error suggesting that there is a possibility of unhandled exception. There is file not found exception. What if this particular file doesn't exist? Is something the compiler is suggesting. If you want to shut the mouth of the compiler saying that abc.txt, I can clearly see that under the project abc.txt file is available. So I don't think this will result in any error. We already have the abc.txt file. So I'm pretty sure that it will not result in file not found exception because at this particular location under the project abc.txt file is available. Hover the mouse on this and ignore the exception. Instead of handling the exception, you have ignored the exception. If you run the code, I'll simply write down system.out.println, end of this program, end of this program. And when I run this, end of this program will be printed, will not get any exception. Because we have ignored the exception, we have shut the mouth of the compiler, which is suggesting that there is a possibility of exception. Since the exception will not come, I have ignored the exception here and end of this program got printed means the file is available, guys. abc.txt file is available. Hence, the file input stream is able to recognize this particular file and get ready for reading the text from the file. Okay, so there is no exception. What if ABC is there, XYZ is there? For example, if I give the name of the file as arun.txt file, do you see any arun.txt file under this project? Under this project, arun.txt file is not there. In that case, since we have shut the mouth of the compiler, okay, when the file input stream will try to find this particular file at this location with the name arun.txt file under the project, it will not find. That's the reason this new file input stream, okay, this particular constructor will give you an exception known as file not found exception, guys, okay? So file not found exception will be now will come in the output, okay? Despite of the compiler suggesting that there is a possibility of exception here, we have ignored the suggestion given by the compiler. We have said throws file not found exception we have given beside the declaration, because of which you see we have ignored the exception, because of which it's saying that arun.txt file is cannot be found in the specified path. In this kind of situations, you will get file not found exception, which is a checked exception, which is actually suggested by the compiler, right? This is a checked exception because, okay, when you write that code, right, the compiler is suggesting you possibility of an exception here, that is file not found exception, okay? Here compiler is suggesting, that's why it's checking by the compiler, that's why it is a checked exception, okay? It is a checked exception. It's one of file not found exception is one of the checked exception. Now input output exception, I'll create another file, guys. File2 is equal new file of. Here I'll give the some folder, a wrong folder location I'll give. Intentionally wrong folder. Intentionally I'm giving wrong folder, okay? I'm just naming it a wrong folder or folder A, folder B. There is no particular folder here. Demo1 folder is there, sample1 folder is there. If I say folder A, let's say, is the folder A available in this project? No. And here under that folder, I will say abc.txt file, I will say. And I would like to create this file under the ABC folder, folder A. This A, otherwise I'll give some other name like, Zensar, okay? Zensar.txt file I want to create. First, to create this particular file, guys, folder A should be available, right? At this location only, under the project, under the folder A, the folder is available. This file I want to create. For that, what I will do, f2.create new file, I'll say. Put a semicolon here. You see, the moment I put a semicolon here, the Java compiler is suggesting that if this folder location is not right, not correct, in that case, there is a possibility of exception here. The Java will not be able to this create new file method will not be able to create a file because the folder location may be wrong. So it's better that beforehand you run the program, you try to surround this with try catch block. Otherwise, you are going to get this kind of IO exception. I don't want to ignore the exception. You can ignore the exception, guys, okay? Either you have to ignore the exception or you have to surround with try catch block. If you surround with try catch block, the exception will come because this folder location is not there and catch block will handle it. But if you ignore the exception without considering the suggestion given by the Java compiler during the compile time that there's a possibility of IO checked exception here, okay? If you run the code like this by ignoring or shutting the mouth of the compiler, during the output, you will get IO exception, guys, okay? Because the system cannot find the path of the folder, that is whatever the path that is specified, right? This folder A path is not available. If you have given a proper path like sample1, etc., sample1, let's say, if you given proper path, it will not come, okay? System.out.println, end of this program, I'll write end of this program. In this case, you will not get the exception because the folder path is right. Sample1 folder is there under the project, so path is correct. Under that, zensar.txt file will be created by f2.create new file. The end of the program will be printed. And if you go here and refresh the project here, refresh the project once. Once you refresh the project, under the sample1, you see zensar.txt file got created. If you give a wrong folder name here, like folder X or folder A or whatever it is, in this case, what will happen? It will not create it will not be able to create the file because the folder location is wrong. The system IO exception will come saying system cannot find the folder path that is specified. At the line 14, we got the exception when you are trying to create a new file at a wrong location, which is not exist. Okay. In such kind of cases, guys, you will get input output exception. Okay. IO exception means input output. If due to some reasons, if input is not possible or output is not possible or creating a file is not possible, you'll get this kind of exceptions, guys, in Java. This is one of the case where you get IO exception in Java. And next one we have is a class not found exception. Okay. The next one I'm going to demonstrate is a class not found exception. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a class, guys. Okay. I'm just going to create a class here. So where I can create class anywhere. In the same file also I create class dog. I'll create a class with the name dog. I don't want to create any variables or methods. You can create though, but I just want to make the code look simple. So I'm just creating some two classes. dog class like that without any variables and methods. But in your case, you can create variables and methods also. Just to simplify the just to simplify the program and just creating some two classes inside the same class24.java file. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to write some code like this, guys. Okay, class dot for name. Okay, class dot for name. I have to give the name of the package. Name of the package is what? IJPack. Under the IJPack, we have dog and cat, right? IJPack plus the name plus what? Under the IJPack dot, I have to say package name dot the name of the class that you want to get. Okay. So here I would like to take the class name. Okay. I want to load this class, guys. I want to load this class. In order to load the class in Java, we have class dot for name kind of for name predefined method of the class is there. Using this for name, we can load the class. We can create an object for the class. Many things we can do, guys. So this line, the for name predefined static method of the class, predefined class in Java. Okay. Whatever the path you gave for the class, right? If the class exists, it will load the class and you can create instance for the class later. Such kind of purpose it has. Okay. Such kind of purpose it has. What I will do here is I will try to collect the class name from the user itself. Okay. I want the user to enter the class name, scanner, and system.in. Okay. System.in. Then simply say Control Shift O and scanner will be imported and simply enter system.out.println, system.out.println, enter any class name, say dog or cat. Okay, enter class. Otherwise, enter class name dog or class. Okay, like this, I'm asking the user. Either the user has to enter dog or cat here. Okay, if dog or cat is there, means you see under this package, it will find whether there is dog or cat, and it will be loading. Okay, so let's see what will happen here, and the user will enter that scanner dot next line. So I'll retrieve that class name into the next line, and here I'll store that into the string class name. Okay, class name is equal to whatever the class name that is given by the user. I'll just give that here. That's it. I would like to load the class using the for name predefined static method of the class. I'm going to load this particular class which is available as a package. You see, Java is very clever. You see, the moment I have written that line, it's giving me a compiler error saying that there's a possibility of class not found exception. That's why it's called as checked exception, guys. Okay, Java is checking that there's a possibility of exception at this particular line. If this particular class entered by the user during the runtime, with the help of scanner class, if it's collecting the class name, right? If the dog or cat class is not entered, okay, then what will happen is some other class like, a butterfly or something is entered, that butterfly doesn't exist. Okay, in that case, under the IJPack, we don't have the butterfly class. If you're trying to load a class which doesn't exist, it's going to give an exception known as class not found exception. Since there is a possibility that the user may enter apart from dog or cat, the user may enter any other thing like tiger or lion or whatever it is. So because of this, the Java compiler during the compile time itself is suggesting that there is a possibility of the exception. So we are ignoring the exception without hearing to the compiler. So I would like to take a chance, like to see what is happening and all. Here, end of this program, I'll print. And here I'll close the scanner objects. This warning message I have to close, guys. Scanner.close is there. So that's it. And run the code here, right click run as Java application and observe that the user will be asked, there is some problem here. So this dog and cat, right? Maybe there may be somewhere else also. Dog X, cat XL, right? Here also, either enter dog X or cat X. Okay. Let's see. Is there any problem now? Save this. Still there. Problem is still there. The dog type X already exists. I'll just give a different name, guys. Dog D, cat C. Let's see whether the error is gone or not. Dog D, cat C. Save this. Yeah, errors are gone. Either you have to enter dog D or cat C. Okay. Because already maybe in project, right, somewhere these classes are there. That's the reason we are getting this. Okay. Or we can use some different names like, we can give snake. Snake I have not used anywhere in the project. Snake. I'll say rat here. Okay. Here either the user have to enter snake or rat. Okay. Rat class. But if the user tries to enter any other thing apart from snake or rat, the classes will not exist at this particular package. And because of which, you may get an exception. Class not found exception. Run the code and see that in the output, the user will be asked to enter the class name, either snake or rat. If I say snake means end of this program, we didn't get any exception. Okay. The class has been loaded successfully here. And this statement has line 19 has not resulted in any exception. Similarly, if I run the code again and this time if I give rat here, this also is not a problem. End of this program came. But apart from snake and rat, if I give something like tiger or something here, tiger, immediately I'll get class not found exception because tiger class doesn't exist under this particular package. You're trying to load a class which doesn't exist in this particular package location where you have given. That is the reason this particular statement, which is trying to load a class which doesn't exist in this at this package location and in this project, is giving you class not found exception. This is another example of the class not found exception, guys. We have ignored the suggestion given by the compiler. Okay, I'll just comment this out. This is another exception type, okay, which falls into the checked exception category where compiler is suggesting in advance that there is a possibility of the exception. This also I'll comment it out here. Okay, what next? I covered file not found, IO exception, and class not found exception also. Now coming to the parse exception. So here parse exception will come when you try to, let's say there is a string, let's say string some str is equal to, I'll give some date in a particular format, like, first I'll give 2024 hyphen month, I'll give 01 hyphen 25. Okay, the date I am giving 25th January 2024. I am giving some random date. Now I would like to convert this string into the date format. For that, we have simple date format kind of class, right? Simple date format predefined class is there in Java to convert this string text, which is a convertible date, is there to the appropriate text, right? Simple date format, new is equal to simple date format, date format. I'll write this and simply say Control Shift O. And here I need to provide a format, guys, like y hyphen. Then I have to say dd hyphen capital MM. Okay, this is the format, exact format. So if I give a proper format here and if I use SDF dot is lenient is false, I have to give. False means it's very strict. Okay, if this format is type that one not or okay. So 1 minute, SDF dot lenient something will be there, guys. I have to see set lenient. I have to say set lenient, not is lenient. I'm setting the lenient to false means it's not going to be lenient. It's going to be strict. If this format matches only in the whatever the format I gave in the simple date format that matches with the given string format, then only this string will be converted into the date. Otherwise, it will not be converted. Okay. After setting that to false, if I say SDF dot format SDF dot format or something. Okay, there is some command here. I have to remember that SDF dot what is that command, guys? Let me see where exactly. Parse method. Okay, parse, and I have to parse this string, guys. Okay, I have to parse this particular string which is containing the date in the given format only. Okay, you see SDF dot parse. And you see there is a compiler is very clever that it's giving a possibility of exception here known as parse exception. What if this particular format is not according to the given date format? Okay, here year is not there here. Let's say here month is there, here a date is there, here year is there. In that case, this format will not match, right? And also it is strict format. In this kind of case, you see there's a possibility of exception. It's saying I'm ignoring the exception. Suggestion of the instead of handling the exception that we generally do in real time, ignoring the exception given by the compiler, but it's suggested by the compiler during the compile time. It falls into the parse exception, falls into the checked exception anyhow. This parse method will return you date. Okay, the converted date. Date is equal to. I would like to print out that date. System.out.println. If everything goes well, I would like to print out the date. Okay, import this date from java.util package. Okay. And after that, now run the code here. You see, there's no problem in this code. This program will work fine because according to the format only, the string date is there. Okay. You see, here year is there, year is there, hyphen is there, hyphen is there. Here date is there, date is there. Okay, here month is there, na? So I have to give month actually. Capital N. I'll give a proper format here. Okay. And here last one 25 is the date. I will give dd here. Okay, so proper format is given means it will be able to convert and print the date in the output console. That 25th January 2024 is printed properly. What if when I set this lenient to false, that means you should be strict. In that cases, when it's lenient, set lenient is set to false, and where the strict format matching should happen, and then you are trying to do something like this. Will this work? Here it's expecting date. While parsing that the string date into the real date, it's first taking the DD. 2024 should go here, 2024 should go here, but DD means date should be there, 25 should be there here. Okay, but here strict format, wrong format is provided. The string is not in the required format otherwise. In this case, definitely, since we have ignored the exception given by the suggested by the compiler, definitely this particular parse method will give you an exception known as parse exception in the output. It is a checked exception. Okay, this is how we can get the parse exception in the Java 24th line. When you are trying to parse a string with this format which is not matching, the string text is not getting converted to the date because of that proper format. It's not following. The string text is not following this particular format. If I change the string text to the required format, then the exception will not come. I'll remove these throws here so that you can see that compiler is checking the exception before we run the code. So that's why it's called as a checked exception. And this is example for the parse exception, guys. Okay, parse checked exception. So finally, what are the other things? What is the other thing we have? SQL exception we have. There are two more exception, guys. One is SQL exception and other one is interrupted exception, which also comes under the checked exceptions category. So I'll explain you the SQL exception. So whenever from the Java, if you want to connect to the database, like MySQL database or something, we have to use JDBC connection. We have to do Java database connection. For this, I have to write the code like this: driver manager dot get connection. Okay, I have to say get connection, and here I have to provide the connection details like JDBC colon. So we have to write JDBC colon MySQL database, name of the database. JDBC I have to give, guys. Okay, Java database connectivity MySQL colon double backward slash double forward slash, and I have to say localhost colon some port number we have to give 3306 colon port number 3306, and after that I have to say slash and give the name of the database. Take DB I'll give. Okay, it's not a real database. This particular database doesn't exist. And along with that, I'll also give comma fake username. I'm not giving proper details. Intentionally, I'm not giving if I have given proper details, Java connection, JDBC will connect to the database. But here intentionally, I'm giving incorrect username and incorrect password. Okay, incorrect password. Intentionally, I'm giving this wrong username, wrong password, and wrong DB details to get a connection. You see, Java is very clever that way before I do anything, run the program during the compiled time itself, it's saying that there's a possibility of exception here, unchecked exception. So I handle this section which a try catch block. If in case this particular statement will not be able to connect to the MySQL database with its given name and username password, there's a possibility of exception it's suggesting in advance. That's why SQL exception also falls under the checked exception category. Okay. And here, yeah, I'll ignore the exception as usual. And here I'll run the system. I'll write the system.out.println end of this program. So end of this program will not be printed because exception will come in the before line 17th line itself will get an exception known as SQL exception because the connection will not be established with the wrong details given. Okay, I have given the wrong DB, wrong username, wrong password, not suitable driver found. This kind of things will come. So the exception that is coming is SQL exception, which is one of the checked exception. Okay, which is checked by the compiler before you run the code. Before you run the code only, the compiler is checking such kind of exception. I'll comment this out. So this is what is SQL exception, guys. When you're trying to connect to the database using JDBC, and if you don't give the correct DB details in the get connection predefined method as an argument, if you are passing not the correct details of the database, in that case, if you pass also, Java compiler will check that there is a possibility of exception and ask you to handle. If you ignore the exception, the error will come, checked exception kind of error. The exception will come in the output. Otherwise, it will be handled in the program using try catch block. But at least Java compiler is suggesting that there is a possibility of exception in this case. And the final checked exception we have is the interrupted exception, guys, that not many people will explain to you. Okay, it's related to multi-threaded environment. Okay, so first to get this interrupted exception, we have to, this is a single threaded program. Whatever the main method that you are seeing here is a single threaded program. Only one thread will be running. When you run this main program, one thread will be there. But I want to create multi-threaded environment. So for example, if I write system.out.println main thread, I'm just giving some name to the thread that is running in the single thread. Main thread started. Okay, system.out.println main thread ended. Okay, this is the ending of the main thread. Main thread ended. How many threads are running in this program? If I run the code, there's only one thread running in the main method thread. Okay, main method is getting executed with the help of only one thread. This single threaded environment. Okay, here in between that I can also give something like a thread.sleep also. Thread.sleep I can say, and I'll give something like, 5,000 seconds, okay, 5,000 milliseconds, okay. Here Java compiler is very clever that just way before you run the code, it's suggesting you there is a possibility of interrupted exception. What if this particular environment is not a single threaded environment? In this case, as you can see, even though I write thread.sleep is a single threaded environment where only one thread will be running, okay, only one thread will be running, and that thread will be running this code from the main method, and main thread started will be running printed, and after that the thread will be going to sleep for 5 seconds. 5,000 milliseconds means 5 seconds. The current thread, that is single thread, will be going to sleep, and after that thread is released after 5 seconds. After it comes out of the sleep, it will print main thread ended. Okay, so I'll ignore the exception here because this is a single threaded program, right? There is no other thread will come and interrupt this. So with that intention, I'm going to, okay, run this code and see that main thread started after 5 seconds. Main thread ended without any exceptions. You will get that. Okay. But what if I create a multi-threaded environment? Okay. What if I create a multi-threaded environment like thread is equal to new thread, another thread I am creating, guys. Okay. Thread is equal to new thread. And you see, this is from java.lang, so you don't have to import it separately. Okay. This thread is from java.lang package, the default package of Java. So no need to import it separately. And here, the thread constructor cannot be empty, guys. Thread constructor cannot be empty here. If you want to create a new thread, you have to write the code like this. Okay. I'll write a lambda expression here. Lambda expression is nothing but a nameless function. So nameless method or function which has a circular brackets. If it doesn't have any parameters, we can provide a circular brackets here, and it doesn't have any name. Okay, if you have some name for the method, right? Method name followed by circular brackets will be there. Nameless function will not have any name, so only circular brackets will be there. And lambda expression has to be written like this. Lambda expression is nothing but a nameless function only. Okay, so nameless function, arrow symbol, and starting of the and ending of the thing. Okay, so if you have multiple statements in that particular function or method, this is the method body, guys. Okay, this method doesn't have any name, and the body of the method, if it has multiple statements, you have to write curly braces. Otherwise, curly braces are not required. I'll press enter here. The starting of the method body, the ending of the method body. In that, I'll write thread.sleep here. I want to run another thread. Guys. I'll name this particular thread as, I'll just give the 2 seconds here. Okay, 2 seconds as another thread. So in this environment, what will happen is now I'm going to create multiple threads here. This Java compiler is suggesting that there is a possibility of interrupted exception, and you have to compulsory surround with tracker. Ignoring is not there. You see, for this thread.sleep outside, we got a ignoring part, but here you cannot ignore that. This particular thread you cannot ignore. You have to surround with try catch block. Just give some try catch block and remove this comment if not required. That's it. Okay. Now, whenever you want to start this particular thread, there is a method, guys. That is, after this main thread started, the program is started, right? The first thread is already started with the main method only, and this particular thread is not started. If you want to create a multi-threaded environment, already one thread is running. While the thread is running, guys, here after the single thread is printing main thread started, I would like to start another thread also. Thread.sleep, I will say. Thread.sleep and sorry, not thread.sleep. Thread.start, I will say. I'll start another thread here. Now we have the multi-threaded environment created where at this point of time, if you see how many threads are there, the single threaded earlier main method thing is there. And along with that, this thread we are starting using the object reference of this thread class, we are starting another thread, which will hold for 2 seconds. And here also I'll write some print statement saying new thread started, and new thread ended. I'll write down. Okay, system.out.println, new thread started, and I'll write down here new thread ended. Like this, I'll write the program. And if I run the code, you see first main thread will start. And after that, second thread also will start. Main thread started, one thread is started. Along with that, another thread also will start. This thread, while the 2 threads will be running parallelly. Okay, the program is running using through multi-threaded means what? At same time, multiple threads are running in the program. Okay, when multiple threads are running in the program, there is a possibility that when multiple threads are running in the program, there is a possibility that you can interrupt one of the other thread. For example, this main thread I want to interrupt. Okay, before the thread.sleep is halting has started, I'm going to disturb that thread, interrupt that thread dot current thread dot interrupt. I'm interrupting one of the thread, that is a main thread. This main thread I'm interrupting in the multi-threaded environment. What will happen, guys? So only the main thread will get interrupted, and because of the main thread got interrupted, while the main thread is going on, main thread is interrupted, and at the same time new thread also has started in the parallelly, like multi-threaded environment is happening where the main thread is interrupted because of the since the main thread got interrupted and you are trying to halt the main thread which already got interrupted. Is it possible to halt a thread which is interrupted? No. In that case, thread.sleep is going to give you an exception, guys. That's why Java is clever, because when you have not ignored the exception, it's clearly suggesting that what if this particular thread that I'm trying to halt will get interrupted. In that case, I cannot halt the program for 5 seconds, right? I cannot halt the thread for 5 seconds. That's what Java has already told us. I have ignored that. I have not listened to Java compiler, okay? Because it's checked exception, right? It may not listen. In multi-threaded environment, you can halt one of the thread on which you want to perform the halting process. So here the second thread, new thread will be still running, guys. Okay, you can start any number of threads. Okay, thread dot stop. This thread will start. You can start any number of threads, guys. But this particular thread, okay, multi-threaded environment where threads are running parallelly. In that, the main thread for which you are going to halt the program for 5 seconds, right? By halting the thread, you are going to halt the program for 5 seconds, right? That thread is going to cannot get halted because that got interrupted. The thread got interrupted here. While the other thread is running, new thread is running, the original thread, the main original initial thread, okay, initial thread is interrupted, because of which thread.sleep will not happen. And this particular statement in Java, because it cannot halt the thread which is in interrupted state, will be throwing an exception known as interrupted exception. If you run this code, if you see that first main thread started will be printed, and new thread started, and while that main thread is interrupted, right? Main thread got interrupted and it's not possible to halt. In the line 30, we got the exception because it's not possible to halt the thread which is already interrupted. But the other thread is still running, guys. Okay, new thread that we started is still running. That's why the other thread doesn't matter whether the exception will come or not in the main thread. Okay, it has interrupted that, and the new thread is completed. And you see, since the exception came in the main thread, the statements after the main thread are not executed, like main thread ended is not coming, okay, because of that exception. So this is one of the example, where you get interrupted exception in Java, guys. Is also a checked exception. Java compiler will suggest that there is a possibility of exception here before you run the code in the multi-threaded environment. Even though it's single-threaded environment also, Java will suggest, because it thinks like, what if this particular program is a multi-threaded environment, even though this kind of code is not there also, it will suggest that there is a possibility of multi-threaded environment where this thread may get interrupted, like that it will think, and then it will try to give that the possibility of exception in advance, way advance. Okay, so all these are the examples of the checked exceptions in Java, guys. File not found exception, IO exception, class not found exception, parse exception, SQL exception, and interrupted exception. These are the main common checked exception we generally find in Java. If you get this kind of question in the interview, this explaining about this, 6 checked exceptions will be more than enough, guys. There may be other checked exceptions also, but these are the most common ones. Okay. So with this practical demonstration, I hope that you got the answer for this question with a very detailed understanding. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye bye.